how we write these sequences is the challenge. I mean, anybody can tell me what's coming next. What's coming next? Think about it for a second. Was I timesing by something? No. Was I adding something each time? Yes, I was. What was I adding each time? 3. So there's a name for that. Do you get the difference between 5 and 2 is 3? And the difference between 5 and 8 is 3? So they're called a common difference. The difference was common. It was always adding 3. So that's called the common difference. And then what's the next one going to be? 11. You're just adding 3, right? And anybody can do this part. But here's the harder part. I'm going to show you how we write this. U sub 1, what do you think comes after U sub 1? U sub 2. What do you think comes after U sub 2? U sub 3. Do you get what I'm doing here? This is the first term, this is the second term, this is the third term. Why a U? It doesn't have to be a U. Sometimes they use an A. And then it would be like amount sub 1, amount sub 2. I am such a nerdy math teacher. I haven't ever told anybody this except my wife. My daughter is having a baby, and their last name is Goebel because she got married to a guy named Goebel. And so this little baby G1. I'm used to like this kind of thing. So A sub 1 is the first one. Well, their first baby, since their last name is Goebel, is G1. All right, I know they're not going to probably really name the baby G1, but they haven't told me a name, so I got to use something for the baby's name, so I'm using G1. Anyway, so this is A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub 3. And could it be N sub 1? Sure. But get used to U's, because throughout this whole unit, we're going to call it U sub 1, and that's the first term. Okay, so what is the first term? Don't overthink this. 2. The first term is 2. So you got to somehow tell the person what to start with, and that's how you tell them. You say U sub 1, first term, is 2. And then this is the part that's definitely harder to understand. So let me try to explain it this way. And I think this works. We'll see if it works for you. Do you get if I just keep adding 3 here? This will be 14, and then it'll be 17, etc. It just keeps going in both directions. You just got a big list of infinite number of terms. If I want to just pick a random term, that's U sub, what if I don't know which one it is? Then it's U sub n. A random term is called U sub n. The term right in front of that, like this way from it, is U sub n plus 1. One bigger than whatever the other one was. U sub n is a random term. U sub n plus 1 is the next one, and what do you think is the one behind it? U sub n minus 1. Very good. Think this through now. Do you get this? That's a random term. This would be the next one, and this would be the one in front of it. Okay, now I'm going to leave those there and see if anybody understands this. A random term can be given by the term right in front of it, and then you got to tell them what to do to get the next term. The term in front of it was here, so to get the next thing, we add 3. All right, so there is how you make a math recursion equation. You start with whatever the first term is, then you tell them any random term is given by the term in front of it, U sub n minus 1. I better hold this down so you can see it again. See, like I picked a random term here. It was the term in front of it was U sub n minus 1. And then it was adding 3 each time. Now, obviously, that'd be really easy to change. If I wanted to start with 10 instead of 2, you could change this to a 10 if you wanted to, right here. And then if you wanted to not add 3 each time, if you wanted to add 5, you just change that to a 5. What if I wanted to times it by something to get the next term? You know, like say you're timesing by 2. Well, then we don't want to say plus anymore, of course. if I put this in parentheses, do you get things that are in parentheses are times by each other? Did you know that? If I put 5 with a parentheses 2, do you get that means 5 times 2? So you put something in parentheses, that means times. So here's a new equation. U sub 1 equals 5. U sub n equals U sub n minus 1. That's called boilerplate. It'll be in every equation you ever write from now till the end of this unit. U sub n equals U sub n minus 1. If you didn't understand what it was, I'll try to keep explaining it to you for a while, but eventually you just kind of like, that's what you write. It means a random term is given by the term in front of it, and then times something or plus something. In this case, times 2. Well then, what's the first term? 5. What's the next term? 10. Because you just had times by 2. What's the next term? 20. What's the next term? 40. And if I had asked you for what's U sub 3, well, this is U sub 1, this is U sub 2, this is U sub 3. U sub 3 was 20. Okay, these are called recursive equations. Let's see if you caught it. I know some of you are amazing at math and some of you are just barely surviving math. So some of you are going to be like, I get this already. I'm ready to do my homework. U sub 1 equals 10. Any random term, August, could you shut that door back there, please, is given by the random term in front of it. But actually, it isn't random anymore. It's the term right in front of it. And then I'm going to say times 3. Could you tell me what the first 4 terms are, including U sub 4?
Sorry, my
Trade?
computer is broken. Yeah.
Trade cups. Yours.
Thank you.
All right, so I am wondering if Vivian knows what the first thing is here. It is 10. Which U sub is that? U sub 1. Good. Christian, what's U sub 2? Say it louder.
30.
30 is correct. Dashel, what's the next one?
90.
Yep. That was U sub 3. And what if they had just asked for U sub 4? Can anybody do it? Yep, 9 times 3 is 27. Add a 0, 270. There you go, boys and girls. Now, there's only a couple little like words that you haven't learned yet. One of them is that is not a common difference, because is the difference between these two really a 3? No. That's called a common ratio. When it's multiply like this, then it's called a common ratio. If you're multiplying, it's called a ratio. And one more thing, if you're multiplying, the multiply kind, those are called geometric. So there's a few terms you have to learn, but really these aren't too hard. They really aren't. It's just a weird way to say a pattern, and most of you guys get basic patterns. All right, here's the other words that go with that. If it's not a common ratio, it's called a common, who's got a good short-term memory? Common difference. Common difference is the kind where you add each time. By the way, some people are like, you said add. You can add a negative if you want to make it a subtract. Adding a negative is like subtracting. Okay, so you're adding each time, and they're not called geometric anymore. They're called this, you're going to think that this is pronounced arithmetic, because in some contexts, this word is pronounced that way. This is one of the only words that I know where you pronounce it differently if you mean something different. This is pronounced arithmetic, not arithmetic. It's pronounced an arithmetic sequence. So this is a geometric sequence. This is an arithmetic sequence. The kind where you add, that's arithmetic. The kind where you multiply, that's geometric. The one kind has a common ratio. The other kind has a common difference. And I'm going to give you one last thing for those, I know there's always kids who are like super organized with their notes and they care about that kind of thing. So here's an example of one of each. U sub 1 equals 5. U sub n equals U sub n minus 1. You always have that every single time. And then if I'm doing a geometric, I put like a 3 here, and that means times 3. This one would be like the same thing. U sub 1 equals 5. Starts with a number. Doesn't matter what. Always means always. U sub n minus 1. And then let's say I want to add something each time. Plus 2. You get how they look almost identical? It's just at the end where one's in parentheses and that means times. And the other's add or subtract right here. This is called arithmetic. This is called geometry. Okay. Cool. Nice easy day. So let's go through the notes quick and let's see if you understood it. These are called recursive sequences. These are called terms. And I said right away to call them like U sub 1 is the first one. So you have to include the starting term and the recursive rule. That's what we were doing when he said U1 equals 5. That was the starting term. Could have been 50. Could have been 500. Doesn't matter what you start with. You always say this, and that's called the recursive rule, and you tell what to do. If I put this, that means times 2. If instead of the parentheses, I said like plus 2, then that means you add 2 each time. All right. So here's one. So the 8th term would be, well, I just figure out what they're doing each time. And I'm like, looks like they're adding something each time, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. They're not adding something nice. Oh, I'd grab a calculator. And I'd go, okay. Oh, this calculator's broken. Hold on. I go 13 minus 4 and see what that is. 13 minus 4 is 9. Looks like they're adding 9 each time. But then I'm going to double check it and see if they're really adding 9 each time. Take 13 and add 9 and I see what I get. I get 22. Looks like they are adding 9 each time. You got to check it. Because sometimes you can't tell until you've like double checked it. Oh, yup. If I actually add 9 here, yup, it works. So then I can just keep adding 9 until I get the U sub 8. I don't need you to do that. It would be really super easy to do. You just keep adding 9. All right. What does this mean? That means the term in front of the random term. This means a random term. This means the term right in front of it. All right. So given these values, write a recursive. Okay. What's U sub 1, everybody? Say it if you know it. 62. It's the first term. What's this? It's always there. They just wrote it for me. Cool. And then what are they doing each time? It looks like they're subtracting something each time. And this was the easiest one for me. I think it's subtract 7. I'm going to double check that though. I'm going to go 55 minus 7 and I'm going to see what I get. I get 48. Yup. It subtracts 7 each time. So then I go minus 7 here. A classic mistake right now would be to put it in parentheses. If you did, you just changed it to multiply by negative 7. Don't put parentheses on it unless you mean to multiply. Go to this slide, please. Victoria, what's U sub 1 in this case?
19. Or for the first one?
What's the first one?
Sorry, 100.
That's all right. You're correct. It's 100. And then what is it doing each time? It feels like it's subtracting 50, and then I look at it and I go, wait a minute. It subtracted 50 and then subtracted 25. It must not actually be subtract. Do you get what they're multiplying by? 1/2, 4.5. Either way would be fine. Yep. I put it in parentheses. That's how my way of saying times by. Do you get if I take 100 and I times it by a half, you get 50? Half of 50, 25. Half of 25, 12.5. All right. Without my help, but you can use a calculator. What is U1? Don't say it, write it. And then what should you put here? And is it multiply? Use parentheses if it is. If it's add or subtract, just put plus or minus. It's definitely not subtract, I'll tell you that. Well, U1 is super easy. Veda, what's U1? 19. And then, how many of you figured out that it was adding something? What is it? Adding what? Say it if you know it. Adding 12. That's it. Now, some terminology. This is called the first term. This is the recursive rule. That's called the common, say it if you know it, difference. Because why? Because it's not a multiply. It would be the common ratio if it was multiplied. All right. And here's my typical problem. Without me saying anything, you can ignore this for now. I'll explain it later, but for right now, just ignore that. Try to figure out u sub 1 and u sub 2. If you can do those two, I'll know you can do the rest. Figure out u sub 1 and u sub 2. Totally can use a calculator if you want to figure out what are they adding or what are they subtracting or what is happening in this one. Iris, what do you think is happening between each term? You are adding 2. So what's u sub 1? Good. And then you add 2 and you get? You are correct. From there you just keep going and you add another 2 and you get negative 3 and add another 2 and you get negative 1 and it'd be super easy. All right. Finding the terms given a recursive. Well, it's the same exact thing except now we're not adding or subtracting. That's multiplying by negative a half. Totally could use a calculator and go negative 0.5. I'd be fine with that. All right. It says find u sub 10. Well, just count. This is u sub 1. This is u sub 2, 3, 4, 5. So then I'm figuring out u sub 6 next, u sub 7, u sub 8, u sub 9, and u sub 10. Now, there's a way to get there faster than this. But I think for today, it's best if you just simply keep adding 4 each time. That's what it was. I can tell by just looking, and you could too with a calculator. Just see if that's what do you add each time? It's adding 4. So I just keep adding 4 a bunch of times. Tomorrow, I'll show you how to do that way faster. There is a way. For right now, learning all the terminology and stuff, just do it plain old-fashioned by adding something each time or subtracting or whatever it is. This one's weird. It's alternating between negative and positive. That happens when you multiply by what kind of a number? A negative. This one's times by negative, think it through. Times by negative, say it if you know it. Negative 3. Because 2 times negative 3 makes negative 6. Negative 6 times negative 3 makes positive 18. See how that was happening? It was multiplied by negative. All right. So if it's increasing or decreasing, you can tell whether you're using a negative or not. If you're adding or subtracting, then that's called arithmetic. And then your thingy always looks like this. And you just add or subtract a number, like that. If you're multiplying, if I had this term, and I times by 5 is 10, and I times by 5 is 50, if you ever want to find this answer quicker, take 10 divided by 2. And it's 5. And you'll be like, oh, they're multiplying by 5 each time. See? Notice, you take the second one divided by the first one. That's the hardest kind to figure out. If you're adding something, it's pretty easy. Like everybody can figure that out. If you're multiplying by something, take the second one divided by the one to the left of it. So 50 divided by 10, it's 5. So apparently this is times 5 each time. Okay. I'm going to talk more about domains and things tomorrow, so I'm not going to use this slide. I think what I've taught you today is good enough to get through the worksheet, which is a Schoology quiz. So everybody, open up the Schoology quiz. And you have a long time in class. You'll probably finish it during the hour. But my dad always said if you were started, you were halfway done. So let's get started on it so you can all be halfway done. Open up the Schoology quiz now, please. you are going to get your, well, you may be able to see your test. We will see. I've got them graded already, but there's a bunch of kids taking it, so I don't know. I might call you up to look at it quick. We'll see. But for right now, would you please open up the Schoology quiz? I think the compromise I'm going to do is I think I'll type the scores in, and then I'll tell you, okay, everybody, you can look at your score. But I don't want to show you, like, I don't want you guys to all have your tests with the right answers on it next to the kids who are still working on tests. It's bad sitch. So I think what I'm going to do is, if you remind me in about 15 minutes, the tests will all be in, and I will, like, release them on the internet so you can see your score. You won't see what you got wrong yet. Tomorrow, I promise you can see your score and what you got wrong and stuff. Okay, so numero uno. Blaine, would you please read me number 1 off the Schoology quiz?
Write down the first 4 terms of the following sequence.
And it hit me with the use of one thing and...
So use of 1 equals 20. Is that use of n
Yep.
equals use of n minus 1
Yep.
plus 6?
Okay, awesome. Then I know the first term. They have blanks, right? The first term is 20. That's easy. What's the next term? 26. What's the next term? 32. Just keep adding 6. Nora, what's the next one? 38. Very good. You passed the pressure test. Okay, go ahead and write those in. That's number 1. All right. I feel like you can handle this. I do get there might be some quiz questions where it's like, I don't know how to type this answer because it's weird. So I'm going to be also, in the next few minutes, adding some hints to the Schoology quiz. So if you refresh it, it'll come up with some hints of how the answers are supposed to look. The first few are just numbers, super easy. But like when you're supposed to type them in, for instance, you use lowercase u's. You can't use uppercase u's. And this is the weirdest thing you'll have to type. All on one line. And you can't use subscripts. I get you can't use subscripts. So you just type it. Normally, the subscript would be the n-1, but you just type exactly that. But I'm going to put those in as hints on the Schoology quiz questions. All right. Would you do 1, 2, skip a few, and find the first question that's kind of weird, that might freak you out a little bit? Maybe number 3 or number 4 or something? Number 4? Would you read me number 4, please?
Recursive formula represents a sequence below.
All right, tell me the sequence. 2, 6, what? 10, 14. Okay, looks to me like they're adding 4 each time. Would you agree with that? All right, so if I'm going to write in this recursive sequence, the first blank you'd want to put in u sub 1, and I get totally you want to use a lowercase u. I keep making them look like uppercase u's, but lowercase u, 1, and you can't do subscripts, so you just type a 1. u1 equals, and then you tell me what's u1. 2. And then the next line is where you're always going to type in u sub n, which I know, no subscripts, I wish there was. U sub n, and then u sub n minus 1. And then you have to either say plus something or times something. I guess you could also say minus something. In this case, what did we add each time? So you say plus 4. But don't put it in parentheses, because that would mean times 4. So that is exactly how you would type the answer for problem 4. If you're ever unsure, just walk it up and say, is this how I would type this? And I will tell you. Okay? Okay, and I feel like that's good enough. And those of you that were taking the test today right now, remember, you should go watch this video when you aren't distracted so that you can learn this stuff. This is a whole new unit, and you don't want to be confused on day 1. All right, that's all I got for you for the video for today.